Hey, everybody, my family and friends. I want to welcome you to today's Bridge Building Solutions podcast. Today, I'm going to ask you to open up your heart. If you're just cruising through on social media, I'm going to ask you to park here just for a minute because I'm going to share some things with you today. I hope that we're all going to learn some things from today's podcast. In this space, in this particular podcast, it is our desire to build some bridges across ethnic, cultural, denominational, and generational lines. There are so many things that have happened into our lives that have kept us separated, have kept us segregated, have kept us ignorant of each other's lives. And it's time for this stuff to end. It just seems like in the world, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And we've got to do something about it. I believe as people of light, we've got to step up to the plate and we've got to open up our hearts. We've got to be willing to get quiet here for a little bit. And let's listen to the Holy Spirit that lives on the inside of us and maybe let God help us move us into a vein that will bring about some help. For a long time, some of us have been fighting extremely hard, trying to get into oneness, a oneness that I believe not that I don't believe, a oneness that Jesus actually prayed for. I have a Albert Einstein quote. It's part of the curriculum of what lies between us. But he made this statement, so many years ago. He said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we use to create them. Think about that. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we use to create them. So I hope that in this space, hopefully we can find some new thinking, some new tools that we need to build them bridges that we so desperately need in our lives. But anyway, before we jump into that, how are you doing? How's your week been? How's your month been going? I would really love to hear from you. If you could give me a shout out, don't hesitate to do that, to email me, to, just give a comment in the feed of whatever, app you're watching or listening to this podcast. We are still so brand new. This is a totally new experience for me doing this. So if you want to get notifications about the latest podcast, as they come out, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. Just search for Bridge Building Solutions on your favorite podcast app. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, and even some more that I don't even know about. Or you can just go to our website, bridgebuildingsolutions.com. You can subscribe to the podcast right there on the homepage and make sure you turn on the notifications. And then you'll be able to be notified every time we come out with a new podcast, if you will. So, all right, today I'm going to pose the question to you. And this is the part, okay, I'm asking you to, sit back, listen and learn, hopefully. But here's the question that I'm posing to you today. Am I an expert at uninformed arguments? Am I an expert at uninformed arguments? Man, we have all been guilty of that at one time or another in our lives, but is that how we are trying to do this bridge building work? Are we speaking out of uninformed spaces? There's been times that I tried to resolve something that I really didn't even know what I was talking about. I thought I had it figured out, but I really didn't. So I posed that question to you today because specifically, we continue to be in a time of heightened racial tension. The reality is that people are still struggling to find their voice and the ability to have productive conversations that help build bridges. We're struggling with that. We get frustrated, we get confused, we get angry, emotions take over because we have not found our voice. We have not come to a place in our lives to have these constructive healing conversations. So we still need help. I know that the world is still a mess. There's still a lot of rancor out there. But what I'm seeing is that we have a mess in the church too. And we're the ones who are supposed to be the light. We're the ones who are supposed to at least be offering hope. We're the ones who are supposed to be at least having an ability with God's help to do this thing right. So that's why I'm speaking up, because I care about the church. I care about the body of Christ. I care about you. So, here's what's going on. Now that for the most part, the protests, all of the rallies have mostly subsided, at least in comparison to what was happening when George Floyd was murdered. People, especially white people, hey, I can speak about this. People, especially white people, are kind of settling back into their routines, not wanting to do the hard work of bringing about the change needed to make this world a better place. It's just too easy for us when things kind of settle down to kind of settle back into our inactive anonymity, and just get back into our routine without wanting to do the hard work that is necessary to bring about the healing that we need up these racial cultural lines. But so you could say, well, Pastor Dean, what do you mean about that? What do you mean we're not doing the hard work? That sounds kind of hard. The reality is, it's one thing to go out on the street and protest. It's another thing to go to a rally and speak up, support what's going on. But you know what we really need to do? We need to start educating ourselves about what people who don't look like us are really going through, facing in our lives. We've got to quit making it about us, and we got to learn how to listen and learn. We got to learn how to be able to see life through other lenses, through other people's experience. We have to learn how to look at what's going on through other people's eyes. That's not always easy to do. We are who we are, and we have had our experience, and it has created a frame that we see the world through. And to put that aside and to make an effort to see through someone else's eyes, through someone else's experience, just by listening and learning, is not an easy thing to do. Our lives are hard enough. The stuff that we got going on is difficult enough. And now you're trying to tell me that I need to kind of put that aside and learn to see things through other people's eyes? Exactly. People who we say we love and care about. People who we say as, the family of God that we love and care about. We have to open our hearts to listen and learn. As people of color continue to fight for change, more injustices are coming to light. And, when those injustices come to light, those exposed injustices have a tendency to make people who look like me, who look like some of us, uncomfortable. Man, uneasy, guilty, ashamed, afraid, fearful. There's just so many emotions that go on when things in the world begin to happen and they begin to get exposed. And the problem with that is, here's what people who look like me have a tendency to do. It's here where we have a tendency to implement a couple what I call survival tactics, and I want to share those with you today. What we do a lot of times, we avoid it. We shut the TV off. We quit listening to what is going on. In other words, we kind of stick our head in the sand, and what we do is we hide in our white spaces until it blows over. If it's not close to home, if it's not in my family, it's not my problem. I'm not racist. I love everybody. And so we just kind of, in order to survive and not deal with the issues that are going on, we stick our head in the sand. And then secondly, and I'm not trying to make anybody mad or uncomfortable. If you think about it, if you just, sit back and listen for a minute, you probably, have done that at one time or another. I know I have. Doesn't make me a bad person. It's just that I didn't know. I didn't understand. And then secondly, here's another thing we do. We need to appease our guilt and our shame about all these injustices that are going on. So whether subconsciously or consciously, I want you to listen to this. We start looking for reasons why that horrible thing happened. There must be a reason. Something must have happened. That person must have done something to deserve what happened to it. There has to be reasons for the injustices that were perpetrated. And the problem with that is that the news media, other people are quick to give us little tidbits of information that are totally unrelated, that somehow in our minds bring some justification, and somehow that sadistically appeases us, and in some ways lets us off the hook. It's like, if I can find a reason, whether it's justifiable or not, I can dismiss my guilt or shame. I can breathe a collective breath of relief and move back into my non-racist mode of living. Let me ask you a question. Just a few weeks ago, the verdict came down in the Derek Chauvin case in the George Floyd murder. And I want to ask you, how many of you that are white, excuse me, were so relieved that Derek Chauvin was convicted of George Floyd's murder? I know I was. I can't tell you the relief that I felt in my heart when justice was served. But you know what? It's not over. That didn't end racism. That didn't end what has happened in the past. That hasn't ended what's going on. That was one instance. Thank God justice was served in that. But you know what? We can't just go, whew, like it's over now, because it's not over. You and I cannot move into our non-racist mode of living. People of color can't do that. People of color who happen to be our brothers and sisters can't do that. They don't want to do that. They are not going to do that. They are fighting back every day, every moment of their lives, whether we like it or not. They are making an issue about the things that are going on, the injustices that are happening. And even though most of the changes people of color are calling for, listen to this, are systemic, have to do with policies and laws that have marginalized them, that have justified inhumane treatment, a lot of people like me who look like me take that personally. Sometimes, we get upset about how certain people are going about certain things to expose injustices. We want to throw out statistics. We want to throw out factoids. We want to throw out things that we've heard instead of what we've learned. A lot of people who look like me take it personally when people of color rise up and say enough is enough. And I said that because I want you to listen to this. It's at that point in time, it's right here, when we start doing damage, when we sometimes start saying hurtful things. It's like we roll our eyes and we say, I didn't own slaves. I'm not racist. That happened in the past. I love all people. I don't see color. I just see people. We say things like, I don't understand why it always has to be about race. When I was growing up, I got bussed. I got abused by people of color. White privilege has never helped me. And it just goes on and on and on. And I want to ask you just to consider how hurtful that can be to people of color. When we act like that and say things like that, even when we say we love and care about people of color, even when we say we love all people, we see everybody the same, and yet then we say hurtful things like that. It's here, right here. And there's so many other things that I could have listed that I've said that so many times, so many of us have said that are so hurtful that sometimes just shut down people of color in our presence. Instead of listening and learning, we spout off something that shuts people down, that hurts people, that just boxes them up. And it doesn't afford trust. It doesn't allow those things to happen. It's right there that we start making these uninformed arguments. We talk more out of what we've heard than what we've learned. A lot of white people, and I'm not saying everybody, but I'm talking about sometimes people who even say they love Jesus climb all over the efforts that people of color, especially Black people, are making. When they stand up and they give voice and they start talking about what's going on and expressing how they're feeling, we don't listen. We don't learn for them. We want to judge them when we should be showing compassion. Listening and learning. We just want to judge how they're doing it, whether or not they should be doing it, unrelated things that have transpired while they were doing it. We want to make uninformed arguments about why things happen to people of color, or why they shouldn't be making an issue out of the things that they're making an issue out of. Why, if they would have just acted differently, that particular injustice would have never happened. I got to ask you, especially those of you that, claim to be followers of Jesus, isn't that the argument that the religious leaders made in the story of the Good Samaritan? He deserved it. Isn't that what justified them walking by? Isn't that what justified them not caring? Oh, he deserved it. He knew that he shouldn't have been on the road. He knew he shouldn't have been traveling at that particular time of day. He got what he deserved, and they walked by. I think about that sometimes as it relates to, our own religiosity. Have we become those religious people who come up with every excuse in the world why we don't have time to listen and learn? I'm gonna make this statement, and again, I'm not trying to make you mad, but listen, white evangelicals have become notorious with this kind of behavior. Billy Graham told Martin Luther King that the civil rights movement was moving too fast. Billy Graham refused to speak about social justice issues. And there's even a lot of people today who believe that we shouldn't talk about social justice in the church. But did you know that Billy Graham later said that he was wrong and that he wished he hadn't done that? I'm, too late. I'm grateful that he came to a place in his life where he realized that he had done it wrong and he wished that he had done it differently. But you know what? We can't make that mistake. I remember about how when Martin Luther King was in Birmingham protesting and he got thrown in jail, how a bunch of white evangelical pastors who look like me, got together and wrote him a letter while he's sitting in jail for being involved in the protest, and told him that he was going about it all wrong. They basically told the man sitting in a prison cell that he was going about it all wrong. The reality is that history has shown that all of their arguments were ill-informed. They were wrong. They were hurtful. And they produced a wedge that continues to survive between the Black church and the white church even today. It's why we continue to be so segregated even today. It's why we still don't get each other, don't understand each other, because people start popping off. People, good intentioned people, I don't know, start making uninformed arguments when in reality, a lot of times we don't even know what we're talking about. So, I want you to if you're still with me here, if you haven't shut me off yet, I want you to listen to this. I'm talking to myself here. I'm not pointing a finger at you. I'm pointing a finger at us. The reality is that at some point in time, as white people, we have to humble ourselves. We have to quit acting like we've got this all figured out, like we have all the answers. We have to humble ourselves enough to listen and to learn to avoid the temptation to start passing judgment and making uninformed arguments. It's just, if I really care about you as a person of color, then I just need to be quiet. I need to humble myself enough to realize, you know what? I don't understand your experience, but I want to learn. And in order to learn, I got to listen. In order to listen, I've got to humble myself. I've got to show some humility and quit acting like I have all the answers. Because you know what? We don't. We don't have all the right answers. At some point in time, we have to stop getting so angry, so defensive about these injustices. Isn't that what loving your neighbor is all about? I just want you to think about that. You are probably a great non-racist person. You probably even have a few friends who are people of color. But in reality, this isn't about us. It isn't how good of a person you are. It isn't about whether or not you have a black friend or a Latino friend or an Asian friend. This isn't about you. It isn't about us. It is about us opening up our hearts to listen and learn. A few days ago, and I'm almost done here. A few days ago, I shared a post on social media about our topic today. I shared a post by Jamar Tisby, and then I made this statement. I used to be an expert at uninformed arguments. I used to be an expert at uninformed arguments. If you don't understand that statement, I was just trying to admit that there was a time in my life when I would have done all the above things that we have talked about today, the things that we have shared with you about today. When it came to racism, the issues of racism, dealing with racism, it was just easier for me to argue about things that I knew nothing about than it was to just shut up and listen and learn. It was easier for me to pass sentence on why this thing happened or how certain people were going about certain things that caused them the issue that they got themselves into than it was for me just to shut up and to listen and learn. I could not let it not be about me. I'm ashamed of saying that. But until it quits being about us and it starts being about the people that we care about, we will never make any progress. It was like I had to prove that I was not a bad person, that I was not racist. I ranted and raved about things that I heard other white people say, things that they told me that made sense to me instead of listening and learning. There are even people of color that will feed into your way of believing, but there's a lot of other people that will speak, truth into the way that you are believing. So we just have to be humble, meek, teachable, and learn how to listen. And when we do that, then we are going to learn. When you argue out of what you've heard instead of what you've learned, you become an expert at uninformed arguments. I have pastored for 40 years, and all through the ministry that I had, I used to tell people, the truth can hurt, but it'll set you free. And I guess I want to say, white people, I love you. I care about you. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. But the truth can hurt. Yeah, it can make you feel guilty and ashamed. It can bring a lot of emotions to you. But if you'll sit in that and lament and allow the Holy Spirit that lives on the inside of you to do a work, it can set you free. Paul said to the church at Rome, he said, when a truth is received with meekness, with a teachable heart, it can bring salvation to a life. Can we listen to the word of God? Listen to that. When a truth is received with meekness, with a teachable heart, it can bring salvation to your life. I have to bring this to a close, but I want to encourage you to be a truth seeker, even if it hurts, even if it does things in you that make you feel uncomfortable. Most of us, if not all of you, watching or listening to this broadcast are good people. I'll give it to you. You probably wouldn't have even jumped on here. You are. Let's just give you that. You don't have to defend that anymore. You don't have to prove that anymore. But if you really want to heal the racial divides, to be a part of that, I want to challenge you to open up yourself to learn about other people's experience. Do you realize that people of color have been talking about racism for centuries, have been writing books, writing articles, writing magazines, holding webinars, have been sharing things on social media for centuries? So my question to you is, are you listening to any of them? Have you read any of their books? I know there's a lot of white people like myself who are out there doing this, but if you want to learn about somebody else's experience, why don't you read their book? Why don't you get on their website? Why don't you sign up for whatever learning platform that they are presenting to you? If all you're doing is listening to white people, then find some people of color that have been talking about this stuff forever. Have you taken the course, What Lies Between Us? Have you gone to brownicity.com and checked out the learning platform that Dr. Lucretia Carter-Berry has created for us? I'd love to help you even more, offline. This is just the beginning of this, and we're going to be talking a lot more about this on different podcasts. But I would love to be able to help you, make some recommendations to you. I can tell you about some great books, about some great podcasts that you can listen to, some learning platforms that you can check out. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to reach out to me. You can email me at bridgebuildingsolutions@gmail.com. You can go to my website. You can contact me through there. I'm on all the social media outlets, at least I think I am. So why don't we just start a discussion? I'm not interested in you telling me I'm crazy. I'm not interested in you telling me that you don't buy into this, that I'm a troublemaker and that I'm a division caller. If you want to keep those, you just keep those comments to yourself. But if you really want to learn, then I want you to reach out to me, and I will come alongside you, and I will help you learn how to take your steps that are going to bring about, help you foster racial healing. I love it. And I love you. And I can't wait until we have an opportunity to get together next time. So may we be people of peace with voices of hope, doing the hard work of love. I love you. I'll see you next time.